Alright, welcome back. Last time we were here, we were talking about World War I. Today, we're going to focus on the period between World War I and World War II. We're going to call that the Interwar Period, the period between the two wars. So, take out these notes, and while you do that, I would pause the video until you're ready. Okay, now that you have your notes out, we're going to look at exactly what happens in between World War I and World War II and see how we end up having World War II. So it's basically a 20-year period between the wars. We've already looked at the Treaty of Versailles, but here's a little summary. So the U.S., because we are over here and totally separated by a few thousand miles of ocean from Europe, was not as affected by the war as everyone else. We don't have any cities that are blown up. All our factories are intact. We actually, the war actually ended up being a good thing for us. It made us rich. It made us powerful. Pretty much every other country involved ends up with big debts from the war. Plus we have all these new countries that we looked at last time that are small, and they have new governments, and so they're just trying to stay stable. Most of them are democracies, and they're just trying to stay stable and learn as they go. Now, Germany. Obviously, Germany had to accept blame for the war. So they are hit the hardest. They have a new democratic government. It's called the Weimar Republic, instead of the Kaiser or the King. They're the ones that had to sign the Treaty of Versailles. So they didn't have a choice. Their choice was sign the treaty or keep fighting. So they signed the treaty. But back home, a lot of the Germans actually blame them for the treaty, even though the Germans weren't involved. Now, one of the reasons they're upset, you can see these pictures here that demonstrate how worthless the mark had become, the German form of money. It's called hyperinflation. Basically, their paper money was worth nothing. There's famous stories of like wallpaper costing more than the money, so people just wallpapered their house with money. Caused a huge problem for Germany. Plus, they're supposed to be paying back billions of dollars of reparations in a short period of time, and it's all just impossible. Germany was just a total disaster. It's been totally destroyed by this World War I. Now, back over in the U.S., we are loaning money to people, which ties us into them. So if they can't pay us back, we lose money. At the same time, we've made tons of money during the war. We've become an actually rich country. And then we have a giant stock market crash, which you'll learn in depth more about next year in your U.S. history class. But this is one of the big triggers to the Great Depression, both in the United States, and because everyone was connected to us, it causes a depression in the rest of Europe. So Germany already had a depression, but this is going to cause it to spread. So on that first slide, you saw the saying, if America sneezes, the world catches a cold, and it comes from this. When we had a little hiccup in our country, it totally affected everyone else, because we're now interconnected through these loans. In addition, the U.S. and other countries had issued high tariffs, so taxes on things from other countries. So typically what happens is if one country puts a tariff on goods from some other country, the country they are taxing does the same thing to them. So then it makes it expensive to get goods from the other countries. It makes it happen less often, and so it's bad for both countries. Both countries end up losing money in this situation. And that's what happens here. In addition to just the economies already being bad, to protect their economies, they pass these taxes. The taxes actually make the whole thing worse. So, by the 1930s, every country is in bad shape, including the United States. And this stuff is true for everywhere. So the two big impacts you're supposed to know about from the Great Depression in all countries, we have this enormously high unemployment rate. For example, even in the U.S., where we came out of World War I looking great, we had 25% unemployment rate. So 1 out of 4 people. To give you an idea of, right now our unemployment rate is about 6%. So that means basically everybody knew an unemployed person. We're also going to see bank failures. Banks are going to actually shut down and go out of business. So if you had money in that bank, you just lose all that money. And it's going to cause people to panic. They don't have a job, and if they had money in the bank, they'd lose that. In addition, a bunch of people in the U.S. had already lost money in the stock market. So things are falling apart. And a political party in Germany called the Nazi Party is going to start gaining popularity. They find a group to blame everything on. They say all of the problems in Germany we can blame on the Jews. A lot of this goes back to the Middle Ages when the Jews became bankers in a lot of these European countries, usually by invitation. There's a backlash against the church giving loans. It's one of the things Jesus teaches is don't charge interest for loans. So if you bring in Jewish people to do that, you can still have your banks operating. And so that makes them an easy scapegoat. Now, the Nazis are the German party, but we have similar things going on all over Europe during this time. Everyone's desperate, and we see 4 pretty bad men come to power. Here's a little, this is just for fun. The fascist 4 is an easy way to remember that. Now, we all know this guy right here, Joseph Stalin, isn't a fascist. He is a communist dictator. We also all know he's not really communist, he's a socialist. But we also all know he's not even really socialist. Lenin told us, don't pick this guy, he doesn't really believe in communism. So those are our 4 guys. Let's take a look at them. So first of all, what is fascism? So we got 3 fascist leaders we're supposed to know about. So what is it? It's a political movement that promotes extreme forms of nationalism. We're actually seeing a lot of this today in the world. It's what we're going to look at after these notes are finished. So you take away the focus on individual rights and you focus on the nation or the country. It is a type of totalitarian government. So all 4 of those men are totalitarian leaders, which comes from the word total, because these guys have total control. Or the government has total control over every aspect of your life. Alright, so here we have the amazing Benito Mussolini. So he is going to be the Italian fascist leader. He becomes famous in what he called the March on Rome. So his big idea, what leads him to become a popular leader, is he is preaching to these Italian people. We have, at one point, built the greatest empire the world's ever seen. What we need to do is focus on making Italy great again. We want to return the glory of the Roman Empire to Italy. He says one way we can do that is through colonies. As we know from our other units, Ethiopia is the only big country that hadn't been colonized in Africa. So Italy's going to try and invade Ethiopia. It actually doesn't work well, but it helps make the Italians feel like we're still important, we're still powerful, even though we didn't get much at the end of World War I. And then later, down the road, he is going to ally himself with Adolf Hitler in hopes that it will increase the influence and power of Italy again. That leads us to Comrade Stalin. So Joseph Stalin, we already know, is going to take over early in the history of the Soviet Union. He has a different style of communism. It's probably not even really communism. He actually does exactly what Lenin was afraid of. So this guy was very intimidating. He leads something called the Great Purge. So anybody who he thought was going to oppose him or might oppose him was killed. It's called the Great Purge. He gets rid of, it's probably closer to 13 million people that he thought would stand in his way. which is at least double what Hitler killed. And this is like all at one time. Some of these people are killed right away. Some are sent to farms, which is down here at the bottom. So he comes up with these economic plans. They're 5-year plans. They're kind of similar to the new economic plan. And so you're supposed to hit a target number. You're supposed to produce something every 5 years. Obviously, if everybody knows Stalin is this violent guy, he gives you a 5-year goal. You do what you can to achieve the goal. It's not super effective, but it does provide some motivation. And he's going to undo what Lenin did with the new economic plan. He makes collective farms. They actually produce less food than the way Lenin had done. So when Lenin changed the rules, they had collective farms. Stalin changed it back. It actually leads to the death of another few million people because there's not enough food. And he's going to create a secret police called the KGB. They spy on everything you do. So they literally would know what you ate for breakfast that day if you lived in the Soviet Union. That leads us to the most famous of all, probably, Adolf Hitler. He becomes the leader of Germany. He is going to denounce the Treaty of Versailles. He's going to blame the Jews for everything bad that is going on in Germany, and he's going to be appointed chancellor. So he actually gets elected, but his party has about 30% of the vote. They're not a majority. But once they're in charge, they're the biggest party, and he is going to do a purge and get rid of all of his political opposition, a lot like Stalin. And immediately the Jews are going to start being persecuted. So they're not saying openly, let's get rid of the Jews, but they are doing things to go after them. Now, that leads us to the Japanese, which, as you can remember, were upset at the Treaty of Versailles because they didn't get anything, even though they were technically an ally. So, we have Hideki Tojo, who's in charge. But we also have Hirohito. So we have a military leader in Tojo and a political leader in Hirohito. So they believe in extreme militarism, which we've looked at before. And remember that during the imperialism unit, they start becoming very imperialistic. They particularly are going to take over Korea, the part of China that becomes known as Taiwan or Chinese Taipei, and a bunch of other islands that are close to them. Basically anything they can get their hands on, they're going to start taking over. And so we've got these 4 aggressive totalitarian countries that appear. Okay, we're going to look at a video of what's going on in the world today, because a lot of these things have cycled back and we have a lot of the same issues coming up. If you have a question about any of these things, please let me know. Otherwise, I will see you in class next time.